To make sure, does it work?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so that's very well. I think in a minute we can start. I'm not sure if there are any people waiting still in the lobby or not.
No, we can start.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. For some of you, very early morning. I know exactly about it. But depending when we are, it's morning, very early morning, almost night or afternoon. So I welcome you all very warmly. Please let me introduce myself because some of you may not know me. My name is Katarzyna Kopecka-Piech. I am Associate Professor at the Department of Mediatization at Maria Curie-Skłodowska University. And together with my great colleague, Mateusz Sobiech, we are the organizers of today's workshop. And this is the 8th edition of annual workshops toward development of mediatization research. And firstly, I would like to welcome you all to our university. Even if only virtually, we would like to say hello to everyone. And in this virtual space, we move right now to Lublin. This is in Poland, very close to Polish-Ukrainian border. We both work at the Department of Mediatization. And as you may know, we focus very strongly on this field of research. We organize many scientific events, not only these workshops, but our department also organized annual conference about it. And we publish a lot of books and even journal on mediatization studies. So we feel that this area of research is very close to our interests and is very important for us. So we are very happy you are here with us, and we will work the whole day together to develop this field even more. Let me say a few words about our workshops, because we started in 2017, and we started from the events taking place on site. And the first workshop was some kind of test of the the formula of meeting, because my idea was to not organize conferences anymore. I was a little bit tired, of listening of people and having very little time for conversation. And I realized also that there is a need to create a safe space of developing the concept, not only presenting the results of our research, but developing the concept, working together to make them better and better. And that's how this idea of workshops emerged. And the first workshop was quite, I think, successful. That's why we decided to continue it with Johan Fornas and Andreas Happ. And as we all know, in 2020, the situation was dramatically changed because of the pandemic. And we needed to switch online. And it was another stress, another question, does it make sense? We are not able to meet, to drink coffee together. That's maybe a problem. And during the workshop with Mark Dus, we realized that, it's even better, because we were able to virtually host people from around the world. Because of financial reasons, ecological reasons, many people do not decide to travel for one-day event to another part of the world. And suddenly, a lot of people from North and South America, from Australia, join us for this first workshop. And that's why we decided to make it online. And we keep it online, organizing this event with Andre Jansson, Andrew Hoskins, Kirsten Franzen. And today, I have a great honor and pleasure to host Carlos Scolari. This is a really great opportunity, and I hope this day will be as fruitful as previous editions. And at the end of the short introduction, I would like to say thank you to all of people who engaged in organization of this event, especially to Mateusz, but also to our great partners. From the very beginning, there were two institutions who supported this event at the beginning, even financially. It was Wroclaw Academic Hub and Academia Europaea Wroclaw Knowledge Hub. Carlos Scolari is a member of Academia Europaea. You know probably that this is very prestigious association of outstanding researchers. We appreciate very much that those institutions still support us. And I would like to say thank you to Tomasz Janosz, the director of the Wroclaw Academic Hub, and to Professor Arkadiusz Wójs from Academia Europaea Wroclaw Knowledge Hub. Without your support, I think we would not continue this event. And going forward to the most important part of the open lecture, which will be in few minutes, I would like to welcome warmly Carlos Alberto Scolari from Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. Thank you once again, Carlos, that you accepted our invitation, that you spent so many hours working on our papers and presentations. I know it was very time consuming, but I hope it will be also fruitful for you. Let me say a few words about Carlos. Carlos is, as we can see on his webpage, is a professor at Pompeu Fabra University, and he specializes in media evolution, media ecology, also in mediatization, of course, and interactive design, etc. He is an author of many publications. I was not able to count all of your books, Carlos, to be honest. The list is so long. It's great, really. A lot of books in Spanish, in English, and I decided to put on the slide only two of them because I feel they are very close to the topic of today's workshop. They are so, influential and important. So the first on the evolution of media, your book published by Routledge, and the edited collection you did it with your colleagues, Mediatizations, Theoretical Conversations between Europe and Latin America, published by Intellect. Of course, Carlos is also an author of many articles published in the best journals in our field, like, for example, Journal of Communication, Convergence, many others. I really believe that his feedback to our work today will be very, very useful for all of us. But I'm also happy that Carlos agreed to make this open lecture public because, we organize those workshops being closed. We call it safe space for a close group of researchers who prepared for this workshop, have been preparing for many weeks to be ready for today. But we started with a lecture which is open for everyone who is interested in the field, in mediatization, in Carlos' work, etc. So I would like to welcome all of you who would like to listen and discuss those issues. And the last thing before I give the floor to Carlos, this lecture is recorded and it will be published at the public channel of our faculty. That's why in the chat you can find the legal formula which is necessary for making it then public. So we assume that being here means you accept the conditions of this recording and its publication. Just for your information, this is very, very important. We are both here, I mean, myself and Mateusz, to solve any kind of problems you may have during this meeting. Please use chat if you want to ask us something about technical things. I think I will not make my introduction longer, because we are all waiting for Carlos' speech. So, Carlos, the floor is yours.
Good morning, thanks, Katarzyna. I hope to pronounce it, I don't know, my Argentinian pronunciation. And Mateus also, thanks to organize this. I understand it's a lot of work hours, but you have experience because this is not the first one, obviously. So, well, I think I would like to be also in Poland. I try to visit Poland maybe next year. Okay, thanks again for organizing this to all the people, especially people in Latin America. They have to wake up very early. Well, we have many things to do today. We have a long day. Today I'm going to talk about mediatizations. I'm going to talk about this idea of material dimensions of mediatization. Maybe for a couple of colleagues from Argentina, they heard me talk about this last year in Spanish. But I have added a couple of things. And for the rest of the day, well, you already know the program. We have a very intensive program. Remember that at the end of this presentation, after the final conversation, we have to change the link. We go to another link because this is an open conference and the other is our link, our closed space. So I'm going to share my presentation with you. Here it is. Okay. Please confirm that you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this idea of three states of mediatization of politics. Along today, we are going to talk a lot about the European tradition of mediatization that is more sociological, is more institutional, and the Latin American road to mediatization that is more based on semiotics and discourse analysis. Here you will see this interplay between Europe and Latin American approaches. But the analytical model, you will see a strong influence of traditional structuralism. So behind this idea that I have an article under review about this. I have an article and a chapter published in Spanish about this. I have a little bit of noise. I don't know if you...
Yes, okay. Now it should be okay.
Okay, thanks. So this is more or less the theoretical framework that I want to mix up in my presentation. We know here you can visualize the theories of mediatization, the European, the Latin American approach. You can see on the right, on the top, this new framework, the new materialism. And I think this is a really great contribution to social sciences and humanities to focus the attention on the material dimension of communication, of discourses, and our exchanges. This is connected to the big discussion about the Anthropocene and the ecological crisis of our planet. But I think this idea, even for people who come from semiotics or discourse analysis, like in my case and other colleagues, to move a little bit our focus and include the material dimension, that's very important. That's present, for example, in the last works of Eliseo Verón, and we are going to talk about that along the day. And finally, this more archaeological evolutionary approach that I have been working in the last years. So to open our analysis to the long-term history or evolution, if you prefer, of media phenomena. So this is more or less the field work where I'm going to move in the next half an hour. Both in the Latin American and in the European theories of mediatization, in the last year we have this presence of materiality. Here, for example, this is just an example, this paragraph from Demediatization, the Andreas Hepp's book, published 4 years ago. It's a good example how the European community of people working on mediatization, they have included the material dimension in the analysis. And this is not only a phenomenon involving mediatization theories. We have seen this in many other areas of social sciences and humanities in the last 10 years, more or less, 10, 15 years. On the other side, as I said before, in Latin America, I think Eliseo Verón, last book, it was the last big contribution of Verón. I think he died in 2015, maybe 15 or 16, 15, I guess. This book is really a great contribution because I feel very close to this book, because between other things, here Veron includes the long-term evolution of mediatization. In that sense, Eliseo Veron is very close to Friedrich Krotz's approach. Mediatization is not a late modernity process. That's Stig Havar point of view, mediatization as a really relatively new phenomenon, but Veron, like Krotz, they include in mediatization very old processes. Veron even talks about the first tools created by Homo sapiens or something like that. Millions of years ago, they were the first signs, the first material stuff created by humans, and he puts the origin of mediatization in these very, very old processes. So this material approach and evolutionary approach, they're very present in this Eliseo Veron's book, and I feel very close to this contribution because I'm working on the evolution of media. I'm interested in the material dimension, so this is a fantastic, this book is a great interlocutor of the work I'm doing right now. So I would like to add another author, in this case coming from the media ecology, media theory, media history also, contribution is Harold Innis. We have arrived to Harold Innis through Marcia McLuhan. Harold Innis died in 1954, I guess. He was very well known. He was the most important Canadian intellectual in the first half of 20th century. He was working between political science and economy. And the important thing is that he has a very ecological, systemic conception of society and change. When he analyzed a lot, he was very interested in the economy of Canada and the potential resources of Canada. So he published beautiful books in the 30s, 40s about the industry of, for example, about the train and the telegraph. The train, the connection between the Atlantic and the Pacific was fundamental in the development of Canada. So he wrote a beautiful book about the construction of the railroad, the connection between Vancouver and Montreal and Quebec and Toronto, and the telegraph, this coevolution between the telegraph and the train, the railroad. He wrote a beautiful book about the economy of codfish. It was a part of the important resource for Canada, for the economy. He published another beautiful book about different industries until he arrived to the pulp, the material, the raw material for the production of paper. Canada has a lot of forest, so it's a very important part of the economy, is the production of this pulp, this material for the later production of paper. And then from paper and pulp, he arrived to his interest arrived to the history of media and communication devices. He started working on that. He published this great, beautiful book, Empire and Communications. And in a few words, Harold Innis wanted to tell the history of humanity, putting media at the center of the analysis, at the center of the storytelling. If you know, I know Karl Marx, he told the history of humanity, putting the fight of different classes at the center, and it was the engine of the history. In this case, Harold Innis said, no, I'm going to tell the history of humanity, putting media at the center of the storytelling. This beautiful book, I don't know if it was translated in, for sure in Italian, never translated to Spanish, maybe Portuguese. It's a really great book because he talks about the emergence of a very old, the scroll in Egypt. He talks about the economy of the scroll, the Roman Empire, all the forms of writing on the rocks. And he introduced this very useful dimension between time-based media. It's very heavy, difficult to transport, long-lasting media, and he talked about space-based media. They were very light, transportable, ephemeral, like the scroll, like the papyrus. And he was not a deterministic, but he produced great ideas about how communication, different media, interact with religion and with political structures. So I think it's in this materialistic approach to media evolution, I think the contribution of Harold Innis are very, very important. He couldn't finish. He died very young in 54, I remember 55, but in this book, he covers the old times until the fall of Rome in 5th century. So, but in his archives, there's a lot of material because he wanted to tell the whole story of humanity, arriving until today. But unfortunately, we have only this book. Just to conclude, in the first page of the Gutenberg Galaxy, the bestseller published by Marshall McLuhan in 1962, he said, this book is just a footnote to Harold Innis' work. So McLuhan recognized the importance of the Harold Innis' works for his analysis of the arrival of the printing machine and the transformation in Western culture. Okay, so these are interlocutors that we will find behind my presentation. And obviously, and I said before, in Argentina, also in Latin America, we have a strong influence of French culture, French intellectuals, since 19th century. So in the 60s, Argentina has a red phone, direct communication with Paris. Liceo Verón, he translated the most important Levi-Strauss books in Spanish in the early 60s. So in that moment, the French theories produced in Paris, they were translated into Spanish in Argentina, because in Spain, they have the Franco dictatorship here. So they didn't have this connection or the capacity of publishing and translating the new theories coming from Paris. So in that moment, Argentina was the interface between France and the Spanish-speaking countries. So this is basic for understanding the influence of structuralism, semiology, and later semiotics in Latin America mediatization theories. That's because we have these strong French roots in our analysis. So I wanted to reorganize mediatizations, in this case of politics, but working with a new triangle, let's say, to follow the tradition. So, and introduce the dimension of materiality. So I propose you a model. Like any other theoretical model, this is a hypothesis. This is just a tool that we should apply and to see if it works or not. Like any other model, like any other theory, we should check it, we should prove and see the limitations and possibility of this. So let's talk about solid mediatization. That's because I talk about the 3 states. So we have a long tradition of solid mediatization. Here we can introduce some elements from Harold Innis' work. We can say that solid mediatizations, they promote hierarchies and ensure the existence in the future. The most important political leaders, they created monuments. We have that long tradition in Rome, for example, Marco Aurelio, this model of the leader on the horse. It comes from Roman Empire. It comes from Marco Aurelio metal monuments in Rome, and we can say that all the different equestrian monuments come from this model. But if you go, we go deeper into the long history of humanity in Sumeria, we have a little solid representation of political power. So we have a long tradition of these solid mediatizations. They express the leadership. Normally we have the representation of the human leader, and here we have an overlapping between the mediatization of power and politics and the mediatization of war, because many of these leaders, they were generals, they were military leaders also, and obviously they represent they express the national values and mythologies. If you go to Argentina, you will find a lot of monuments like this one of José de San Martín, our most important reference in 18th century. He was a general, and he was really the military leader in Argentina that liberated Argentina from the Spanish Empire, but he also was a leader also for the independence of Chile and Peru. This original monument was produced in France for Chile, but it was reproduced in Argentina. So in every city, in every little town in Argentina, we have the same monument of José de San Martín. And if you go to Central Park in New York, you will see in the beginning of Central Park, between the 6th Avenue, I guess, and the beginning of Central Park, you will have this, exactly the same monument, and another one of Simón Bolívar, the other important political and military leader from the north of South America. So they are in front of one, in front of the other one. So this is the most classical representation and solid mediatization, we can say, of José de San Martín. And also, solid mediatizations are not from the past. In 20th century, we have also this tradition of creating big buildings. We can say monuments in that, specifically in Argentina in the 50s, with the first Juan Perón and Evita government. They had this the characteristics of these leaders was they have a strong policies from the state, a strong presence of the state, just the contrary of what's going on right now in Argentina. Milei is trying to destroy the last part of this big state created in the 40s and 50s of the last century. And they had also the idea of creating this big building and a monument to the Peronist Argentinian workers, and it was never built. It was never built, but it was supposed to be bigger than the Statue of Liberty in New York, on the Cristo Redentor of Brazil. So it was really a big, solid mediatization of power, of politics in Argentina. We have the little representation and the plans of this. And also it's interesting to see that when Perón governments fall in 55, the other groups, they destroy all the representation of the solid mediatization of Perón and Evita. In 55 was the revenge, and that was part of the military coup, because they destroyed the solid mediatizations. We have a long tradition until today of destroying these buildings, these monuments of political leaders. Something like this happened in Venezuela a few months ago. So this is not all stuff. We still have solid mediatizations, and we still, people, they still destroy sometimes solid mediatization of politics. Let's talk about liquid mediatization. Obviously, if we talk about liquid, here the metaphor comes from Bauman. He introduced this concept in the late 90s, early 2000. We have the first book, at least bestseller, was Liquid Modernity, and then in the following 20 years we have an explosion: liquid art, liquid education. I think what happened in Spanish, I don't know in the rest of countries, is that maybe the original title did not include the word liquid, but publishers, when they translated the books of Bauman in Spanish, they put liquid in the title of the books. It was an explosion of liquid because that was a good thing if you wanted to sell books, to introduce the concept of liquid. I think it's a good metaphor to express modernity. When we talk about liquid, we talk about rivers, we talk about this fluidity, we talk about a flow going from A to B, this sequential, this movement from one place to another. So I think that's the idea of modernity. the idea of progress also. If we talk about mediatizations and what I call liquid mediatization, I think we can reconstruct a long history of liquid mediatization. We can start with Harolainis, the papyrus, but I think in modernity, the press, in the beginning, there was some kind of material stuff, the printing newspaper, but then 20th century, we have radio, we have television. So I think this liquid mediatization, they express a progressive loss of materiality, especially we have in the 20s, 30s, the mediatization of radio, and after the 60s, we have video politics. After the first debate between Kennedy and Nixon in 60, we have the beginning of video politics. And that's, for me, part of liquid mediatizations. We can talk about the transition from a liquid mediatization paper-centered to a liquid mediatization Hertzian webs centered, no? Electronically centered. Bauman talked about the hardware era, the heavy modernity, and for the end, he talked about the software era, the light modernity. So we can say, for me, that's all part of the liquid mediatization of politics in this case. We can see how materiality starts to disappear when we arrive to the electronic media in this mediatization. I think that in liquid mediatizations, content has a shorter life cycle. And again, we have this idea of sequentiality, no? The flow, the episode. I think one of the last examples of liquid mediatization of politics is the Mañanera, the former president of Mexico, Andrés López Obrador. He was the president until a few months ago. He used for 5 years, every morning, he has a TV program in Mexico every day from 7 to 10, 3 hours, the president talking, inviting ministers, answering questions, showing videos. It was a TV program every morning. You can imagine the influence. And it's incredible because it was a successful program. Then later it expanded to YouTube, other social media, but it was traditional broadcasting production. I think that is one of the last powerful examples of liquid mediatization. Every day, sequentiality, 3 hours, talking, television, broadcasting television. It's a great phenomenon. And to conclude with the third state of mediatization, I think that we are now in a new environment that I have defined it as a gaseous mediatization. I think that gaseous mediatization have broken the monopoly of information, content becomes memetics, and we have these bounces. Contents now circulate frenetically on social media, on platforms. And we have good examples. I think I'd like to talk about 2 of them, of leaders, politicians, or actors that they come from broadcasting. We can say that they come from liquid mediatization, and they're really good doing gaseous mediatization. The first case is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, you know that he comes from broadcasting television, he comes from a reality show, so he has the skills of traditional broadcasting leaders. But he, in the last 15 years, he was a strong actor in Twitter first, now he's back, and in his own social media. We can see Donald Trump as a transition actor because he comes from liquid mediatization. He was really good in television, but he's also really good in the new environment. I think one of the other last examples of great mediatization, liquid mediatization, was also Silvio Berlusconi. Silvio Berlusconi, for me, is the top of video politics. I was in Italy in the 90s, and I saw the emergence of Berlusconi as a political leader, and the abilities that he had, the skills to move in front of the camera, was incredible. And I think Donald Trump comes from that, but he's in a transitional character. And he's also really good moving in this new environment. And the other one is my friend Javier Milei from Argentina. Javier Milei started in television, in traditional television. He was an actor in these panels discussing about economy. And so he comes from broadcasting, and obviously he's really good on Twitter, and he has a little army of young people, especially producing content for TikTok and other platforms. Well, I think this famous TikTok video, Milei destroying the Argentinian state, taking out the ministries, it was a viral communication. I remember I was in Colombia 24 hours after the publication of this video, and all my students in Colombia, they had already seen that. So it was a global phenomenon. So that's another characteristic of this gaseous mediatization. Content is viral and has a fleeting lifespan because it's very short lifespan. Because, for example, Javier Milei, he introduced a discussion about anything when he was a candidate, but also today. And the conversation, the hype, is very short, maybe lasts 48 hours, 2-3 days, because a new one arrives, a new one arrives. So he keeps the community discussing. He's constructing the agenda every day, maybe with a tweet at 2 in the morning. AMLO, the president of Mexico, he needed 3 hours every day in broadcasting to dominate the agenda for the rest of the day. But here, with a little micro text, with a little capsule of the snack culture, is enough to keep in all the society talking about what he wants the rest of the society to talk about. So let's talk about these 3 states of mediatization. Here we can use again the famous triangle by Levi-Strauss. I think we can talk about solid mediatization, liquid mediatizations, gaseous mediatizations, solid mediatization. Obviously, materiality is really strong. They are made to stay there. They are made to last for the eternity, the big monuments, no? The future, we should know who I was, the political leader may think, no? And the materiality is really, you can touch it. When you go to liquid, and especially gaseous mediatizations, materiality tends to disappear. It's more, it's bytes of information. It's a digital communication. On the other side, liquid mediatization, they're easy to transport, the idea of flow, circulation, progressive dematerialization, and today the hegemony is of this gaseous mediatization. They're ephemeral, accelerated, fragmented, and they last they have a very short life cycle in the global conversation. So this is, we can say, more or less a taxonomy, and I think I have applied this to mediatization of war. If I have time, I would like to apply to mediatization of sport. So I would like to test this model to see if it works. Okay, just to conclude, I think the 3 states of mediatization are not phases. It's not that we have one, then the other one, then the other one, but they coexist. It's like the Marvel multiverse. But normally one state tends to be hegemonic. So we can say that in modernity, but also before modernity, liquid mediatization, this flow, but especially with modernity, with newspaper, radio programs, television, we have this liquid mediatization where the hegemonic state, but we still have solid and maybe little form of gaseous mediatization. I think that now we have this transition. I think that today gaseous mediatization is the hegemonic form. We still have beautiful monuments. Maybe the end that this crazy conflict between Ukraine and Russia, they finish, they will generate new monuments. We will have solid mediatizations that for sure in both sides. I mean, but I think that today the construction of politics, the management of power is especially gaseous. It's a gaseous form of mediatization. And I think we can analyze transitions, obviously, inside one state and within and between different states. So that's important. No? because these are not static containers. I mean, we have movements from one mediatization. We can imagine if we have hybrid forms of mediatization. There's a lot of things to discuss about this. As I said before, I have applied this to the mediatization of war. I would like to apply this to religion. I would like to apply this to the mediatization of a sport. So I think this is a tool that I would like to test on different phenomena. Two questions just to conclude, or two issues. One is, are there other states? Because if we read what's happening in physics, it seems that there are not only 3 states. They have discovered new states of matter, some kind of quantic, very complicated to understand. So maybe in the future we have more than 3, and maybe we do not use anymore a Levi-Strauss, and we go to gray mass square. I don't know. We have in semiotics we have different options, and the other thing, and this is very important, even if I talk about gaseous mediatization, this gaseous textuality, we should remember, and that's very important, that behind gaseous mediatizations and liquid mediatization, we have a very strong material, solid infrastructure. It's beautiful. TikTok is the cloud. TikTok is gaseous, or Instagram, but behind TikTok, behind Instagram, behind any platform, behind artificial intelligence, we have a very solid material infrastructure. We have the server farms, we have consume of energy, impact on our ecosystem. So the analysis of gaseous contents and forms of mediatization should not hide the real materiality behind that. Okay, so if you want to read something more about this, I have an article under review. I have a chapter in Spanish, but last week the CCCB, the Contemporary Culture Center of Barcelona, they published this article. It's in Spanish, Catalan, and English. It's about the gaseous society, and maybe in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, maybe before Christmas, they will publish another article specifically about gaseous politics. So I'm talking about Donald Trump and Milei, and that will be also in Spanish, English, and Catalan. So that's all. Thanks for the invitation, the attention, and I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you for a wonderful lecture. And now it's time for questions and answers. So if you would like, you can just raise your hand and ask a question, or if you prefer, you can also write it in the chat. We will read it for you. And here is the first question from Carolina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
you. Thank you for the fascinating talk. I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about what would these phases of mediatization, if we're putting it like this with the solid, liquid, gaseous taxonomy, what would it look like when we think about constellations? Because when we think about the gaseous state, we also have a very aggressive censorship machine that, blocks YouTubers, kicks people off Twitter or X. And with this censorship, what I've noticed is that people or these media sources tend to become more dispersed and diffuse. So when you listen to a podcast, they say you can find us on Rockfin, Rumble, Twitter. Everyone now has like 5 or 6, sometimes even 12 platforms. So what would you say about constellations across these phases? Thank you.
I never used the concept of constellations. Obviously, if we move inside the metaphor and the metaphoric language and analysis, obviously we have censorship, but I think this is my particular point of view. because we hear a lot that Elon Musk controls Twitter and Mark Zuckerberg controls Facebook and so on. And I have the suspicion that nobody controls anything in our society. I'm not saying that we do not have strong corporations that they're making money with our data and so on. But this idea of control, I think it's a utopic, I think, especially in gaseous environments. If you put the gas in a container, but if you compress it a lot, it will explode. Gas will move from another place. That was also possible in liquid mediatization, I guess. But now I think it's very difficult to control an atmosphere. So you may have turbulences. You have more pressure in one place. It's like another atmosphere. You have pressure on one place, and then the mass of air that moves to another place. No, think what's happening between Twitter and blue sky. But we should reflect on the idea of constellation, this other concept. But well, I don't know. I don't know if you have any suggestion, Carolina, about this, about how to think about this concept.
No, I'm just curious about it, and also because I follow some. I think that in the gaseous stage, there's also YouTube, which is kind of between liquid and gas, because it's like TV on your computer, but people watch it every day, the same programs. So, and everyone's always complaining about getting kicked off and having to. So yeah, I just was wondering, but thank you so much just for considering the question.
Since the introduction of the web in the early 90s, there were different strategies to introduce broadcasting inside the web. Maybe all colleagues remember that in 96, 97, Internet Explorer, the browser made by Microsoft, in 97, they introduced channels in the gray interface of the browser. On the left of the screen, you have different buttons, CNN, Disney, ABC. So that was the logic of television inside the web. And there was a rebellion in that moment. I remember, no, we don't want television inside the network. That's another paradigm. The network is democratic, it's participatory, it's flat. Don't try to smuggle television inside the net. And that feature of the browser lasts for about 1 year, disappeared. Later, in 2007 or 11, I don't remember exactly, YouTube introduced channels. And nobody said anything. It was cool. No? So you can see how they smuggle finally television in the web. And Twitch is broadcasting also. Streaming, we say streaming now. But, and that's interesting because I think we are in the middle of these two paradigms, broadcasting and networking. But in the middle, we have all these gray hybrid species. So I think that transitional technologies in the middle between liquid and gaseous forms of mediatization.
So maybe that's the fog. That's just fog. It's between the two.
Yeah, why not? Because it's difficult to take a picture of gas. It's difficult. Any map that you create, even using big data, this beautiful graph is a picture of a moving environment. That's because it's very difficult to predict. It's like atmosphere. Even if we have the most powerful computers, we still don't know if tomorrow will rain in Spain and will destroy a city.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the first person on the waiting list is Camila. Camila, you can ask your question.
Yes, hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. The first classic question on online workshops. Yes, Professor Carlos, thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. My question is specific about this discussion about the materialities on mediatization approach. I think it's like super interesting and necessary because perhaps it has not yet received due attention to this. And do you think that material semiotics, which is also has like a strong connection with actor network theory, the end. Do you think it's a good method for addressing these issues? There is also like a text by Lewis and Westland, it was published on 2015, that analyzes transmedia activity based on 4 categories, which is actors, actants, activities, and also audience. I particularly think that articulated with material semiotics, it seems to be like a good way to explore this dimension of materiality within mediatization. I would like to know more about you about this specific topic. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, you know, the actor network theory has changed a lot because even the Bruno Latour or John Law, they never want to create a solid theory. They prefer a more liquid, let's say, or gaseous theory. So, but in one moment of this never-ending mutation of actor network theory, in one moment they say actor network theory is like material semiotics, and I love that definition. I found it very, very useful, and I work a lot. I have introduced a lot of things from Latour and these material semiotics into other books, other things I have worked. Yes. That could be when we think about these bridges, connections between Latin America and Europe and mediatization and semiotics. I think that could be another good construction, or maybe a set of concepts that we can use to find a common language to work together between the different traditions. I think in that case, Latour comes from semiotics. One of the most important Italian semioticians, Paolo Fabri, he was in Paris in the 80s, and he published a couple of articles with Bruno Latour, and you see the first version of actor network theories. Bruno Latour talk about actants. That's gray mass. That's French semiotics. So I think that's very interesting to see. And the material dimension in semiotics, yeah. Also in Italy, for example, I lived 12 years in Italy, and there's a very Italian approach to material semiotics, that is semiotics of objects, semiotics of design, you know, the long Italian tradition of design. So many semioticians in Italy have worked with semiotics of design and material objects. So my answer is yes, obviously. It's part of this intertextual network of exchanges. Yes, material semiotics, yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next person on the list is Lucio, or Lucio, please confirm.
Good morning, Lucio. Yeah, as you please. Nice to meet you all. Congratulations, Professor Scolari, for this brilliant lecture. I would like to ask you something quite provocative, which is Peter Sloterdijk formulations. If you have some thinking of some interactions that could have between bubbles and global and fun, because it sometimes remind me of Sloterdij's formulations and these scales, these questions of scales. It's just an open question, as you please.
Yeah, thanks, because I received this question a few months ago, and I had a very, very light knowledge of Sloterdijk. He's a very, very important philosopher and very deep philosopher, and that's in my reading list to check. Really, I need maybe for holidays to go deeper into this analysis. I found a couple of short articles about the theory of the spheres, and I found a potentially good connection between these. Obviously, he's working in philosophy. He has a different framework, more sophisticated, but the few things I've been reading about the spheres and Sloterdijk, I think they're very useful. it could be another intertextual conversation. The problem is when you start looking for interlocutors, only new materialism, there are so many books publishing every week right now. For example, in Spanish, in Argentina, we have Caja Negra as a publisher. They're translating a lot, especially British production, new materialism. But now new materialism have arrived to media studies. I have a couple of beautiful books published in the last 2 years about new materialism and media. Beyond Jussi Parikka, I mean, other people from Australia, Ballmer, he works on materialist theory of media. So we need a lot of time for reading everything. But I think that's a good connection also. Yeah, I would like to improve my knowledge of these spheres.
Okay, there are 4 minutes left, so short questions and quick answers, I think. Now it's time for Sebastian.
Hi there, thank you. Thank you, Professor Scolari. Really interesting stuff to think about. I just want, my question is a little bit thinking about, I mean, using this metaphor of gas, and quite often when we say we lift a lid on gas and it escapes, and then how do we contain this thing once again? And I guess my question is related to perhaps thinking about mediatization and the solid, the liquid and gas, and the relationship to the archive maybe, and how we can see changes of how these states are perhaps more difficult to contain or to put back, say, once those things escape, perhaps using the metaphor. But I wondered if you could expand a little bit on this idea, maybe.
Yeah, that's another beautiful field, archive studies. And I think we can create a connection between the three states and archives. When you see the evolution of media and history of media, history of communication and archaeology, what happened is very funny, because great monuments created 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, they were destroyed. In the old times, the most important texts, they were written on the rock, the laws, the code. So, but many of these traditional old important texts, they were lost because of the wars, earthquakes, and many other everyday text on a scroll, administration papers, let's say, that were not written to survive in the future, because they were the production for everyday management of the Egyptian empire. They survived. So that's a good thing to take into account, because I think this division is still alive. We have important things and we have not important text. But it's not sure that the important things that we would like to preserve will survive, and probably a lot of crap material will survive in the future. In the middle, we have a lot of printed stuff, newspapers, archives. We have more or less the history of the book. We have more or less copies of that books. That was the good thing with the mechanical reproduction. But now, for example, there's a research group in Germany. They are creating digital versions of the first newspapers in 17th, 18th century. So once they have digitalized the content of the old newspapers, they apply big data and computational analysis to the articles. That's fantastic. So the big question is, will we be able to read a PDF, an HTML page in 200 years, 2,000 years? I asked this question many times to people working in computer science. They say, no, because the standard survives in the new standard. Well, when I was in Italy in the 90s, we produced a lot of multimedia CD-ROMs for Macintosh and Windows. Now I can't navigate on them. You need the hardware and the software from the 90s to put the CD inside and navigate that. I heard that archive.org, this beautiful website and portal with archives, I heard that they use about 50% of the budget to format again all material. Another 50% to include new material in the machine. But 50% of the budget goes to translating all the stuff into new formats. So, well, I think it will be very difficult to have in the future an archive of all the conversation that we have in the gaseous environment. Even if we have great servers, and it will be, I don't know, it's a question about that, the future fossils of our communication. And for sure, I think that many important stuff will disappear, and many everyday communication. Maybe this meeting will survive in 2,000 years, and not the books.
Thank you very much, Carlos. The time is over. It's 1 minute past 12 o'clock, so we have to switch to the close part. My warm request to other participants who wanted to ask questions, or even there is one question in the chat from Tina. Please write down your questions in chat. Even if we close the meeting, we will archive these messages and send to Carlos. And Carlos, if you'll be so kind, please someday, even next week, answer the listeners. We were not able to continue discussion because of a time schedule. So I would like to say many thanks to Carlos again, and to all of you who came here for this open lecture. Short information to all participants of the closed workshop. Please use the second link you received via email, and we quickly switch there for the closed part. Thank you very much.
You have my email in the chat, so you can write to me.
Very well. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. Thank you to you all, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Dziękuję, do widzenia.